Hello and welcome to the Tuesday edition of Boilermaker Lounge. Welcome in. I am Sam Sprunger. As always, Grant Flora joins me. Grant, it's a new week and things are looking nice. Hopefully, you had a good Memorial Day weekend.
Yep, Tuesday after Memorial Day. It was pretty good. It's still on the chilly side, I feel like, here
Yeah.
in Indiana for end of May, but yesterday was really nice, so that was pretty good. But yeah, it was a good weekend, ready to rock and roll into the end of May and finish off another month closer to 2025-26 NCAA Division I men's basketball.
It's coming. It's slowly, but
It
it's
is.
coming. And I thought I had an original idea yesterday when I decided I was going to grow out, but evidently that's a big thing on this weekend.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
Well, yeah, it's a little on the chillier side, tier 2, but we're getting closer to where short sleeves are almost okay in the morning. But we are wrapping up our roster evaluation today, and moving forward, we've got some other things on the horizon after today. But the big three is who we're covering in our roster evaluation today, Grant. It's not a real big surprise that we kept these guys for the last, because not that the others don't mean something, but these three, I think there's probably a hierarchy of if we lose them, it becomes a little bit more dire. And I think I would put it as Fletcher at number 3, TKR at number 2, and Braden at number 1 of the hierarchy of if we lose those, that's how much of a dire situation we are in. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. I think obviously with TKR's season last year, All-American, he would be a pretty big loss. And then Braden, though, with his ability to run the offense and all the stuff he provides, he would be the first one that would probably make the biggest impact. TKR 2, Fletcher 3, but all three of those guys are critical to kind of the core and backbone of this team. And losing any one of them would cause problems next year. I would be pretty confident in that.
Oh yeah, that's I think that's a pretty astute way of, looking at that, because they've been there from day one, as freshmen, and progressively they got more playing time, let's say it from the TKR standpoint at least, because Braden and Fletcher have been playing since day one of their career. They've been, I mean, to me it looks like they're the old men of the roster. I mean, it's amazing to see that, because we've seen them from day one be these freshmen that looked really, really good, but had some shortcomings. Now, I'm not saying they're perfect and have no shortcomings now, but those shortcomings are fewer and farther between than what they were when they were 4 years ago.
Yeah, they're much more solid players than they were as freshmen. Also, keep in mind, Trey Kaufman-Renn's a fifth year. Like, he came in with Caleb first
That's
in that
true.
recruiting class, and then he redshirted that season. So, like, he has been around. I mean, it's going to be his fifth year in the program, and he's just been developing, and we're starting to see that come around. And so he obviously will be a huge leader for this program. But obviously, Fletcher and Braden have been there in 4 years. Their experience, they have got to be the most experienced senior guards that are going to be in the country. Like, if you think about it, between the fact that they started every single game as freshmen, were 1 seed in the tournament, and they went through the ups and the downs of losing early and then going to the championship game and everything in between. So when you think about experience, they're right there. Skill, they're right there. That you can't argue that they've got to be one of the best backcourts in the country. And then you throw TKR in there as a great front court piece. Like, these three guys can make up a huge part of what this team wants to do.
Yeah, let's look at the big three. Let's start with Fletcher Loyer, senior. He's from Fort Wayne, went to Homestead there in Fort Wayne. Last year, 44.4% behind the 3-point line. You had that with Liam Murphy. And my goodness, you've got two guys that are going to shoot or can shoot, and you would expect to be somewhere around there, around 42 to 45%. And if you've got, somebody that you can, substitute in for somebody like Fletcher to have Murphy there to open that up. That's huge. And for him, for Fletcher, 84% from the free throw line, almost 85. He's almost a walking bucket when he gets the ball in his hand and gets an open look. He does go through some spurts where he doesn't make the shots and he doesn't create his own shot very well. But with what we've got in the lineup, I don't know that it's essential that he be one that can create his own shot. You'd love to see it, but you don't have to have it.
Yeah, I think the version of Fletcher Loyer we see or we have been seeing is going to fit much better in the team with their current roster. Like last year, I feel like he had to be relied upon to do a lot, like as the third option offensively, to create his own shots a little bit, to be a bit of a distributor, and then to be able to guard defensively. All of those things were really important for him. And now I think he can get away with some of those deficiencies almost, if just especially on the defensive side, because they have so much more around him. And I think if you see some lack of aggression from him, like that was part of what we were talking about in the middle of the season, was like he just needs to be more aggressive. He's too inconsistent. Some games he's all over the place and doing great. Some games he's just kind of sitting around the 3-point line waiting for an open look. Now I think even if he's not as aggressive, I think it's okay. I think we still want to see the aggressive Fletcher Loyer, but if he's not, the team can still do well and win because you have Omer Meyer and Braden Smith, the guys who can create their own and create for Fletcher Loyer. So I think that bodes really well for him, but I think you also want to see him take that step of being more consistent and aggressive to get his own shot if he has the opportunity, and just all around be a more consistent player.
Well, yeah, I mean, you always want to see more. I mean,
right.
Like I said, it's not that we wouldn't want to see it, but I think with the roster that they have now, like you said, there's some. He's the number 3 option in my. This is my thought process: is he's the number 3 option, but it's not so dire if the other 2 aren't going, because there are other scoring options that will be coming in. That will be able to maybe take that pressure away of being that number 1 option for Fletch. You're right. He's gonna hit shots, and but a lot of times, he's got to have it to where he's coming off a screen and kicking out to where he's open, but it's not really him going off the dribble. Now, we saw him multiple times go off the dribble and get some fouls, draw some fouls to where he got to the free throw line. If we can see more of that to get some of the other team's defense on some, in a little bit of foul trouble occasionally, or draw some fouls, that's great. But honestly, if he keeps being Fletcher of the previous 3 years, I think we're in a lot better shape than what we were, let's say, last year comparatively to what we're going to see this coming year.
Yeah, the nice thing is, I think that I'm going to talk about kind of 2 extremes for Purdue. It feels like they're either playing guys that can shoot the ball really well, like standstill threes, and can just score really well on the perimeter. And then you're seeing really good front court players. And you're seeing that contrast of, like, if you're not a really good shooter or a really good front court player, like, there just aren't many of those on Purdue's roster that are going to play. And so you're going to see guys like Oscar Clough, TKR, draw a lot of attention in the post, and then they'll be able to fire out to 3 or 4 different shooters that can bury threes if they're open on like 75% if they're wide open, you could say. Something along those lines. And I think that's going to create a really nice offense. Even like last year, guys like Caleb First, he wasn't going to draw much attention defensively because he just wasn't an offensive force. He also wasn't a shooter. So it helped the defense a lot as far as who to focus on. Now, if you have Smith, Loyer, Murphy, and Cox on the floor with Clough in the middle, the defense has to converge on Clough because he's so good in the post, and then you have 4 lights out shooters to make them pay if they double or are late in a rotation or anything like that. I think we're seeing more of those extremes on this Purdue roster of really good shooters in the perimeter and dominant forces in the post with your 4 or 5 spots.
Well, take a look at last year. He scored, excuse me, let's see here. What did it say? He scored 10 points in 20 games last year, or more in 20 games last year. That to me is a pretty consistent. I like the consistency out of that, because you're gonna, or I'm sorry, not 20 times, 29 times he scored 10 points or more. He had 4 20-point games. That to me says there's that consistency, that he's always going to be supplementing whatever the Boilers are doing during the game. I don't see him as a number one option, and I don't know of many that would say yes, he's the number one option. I mean, just the eye test says that of watching him play, but to have that pretty much guaranteed of at least 10 points, sometimes, I mean, he averaged I believe it was 13 plus points a game last year, 13.8 last year. So, I mean, that is a great consistent number 3. I really do think. And the fact that he is that consistent, he hits threes all over I mean, he's got 197 career 3-pointers in his career at Purdue. That's number 10 right now. So he's only going to go further up. I mean, honestly, if he has the season that we think he could have, he could crack that top 5, I think.
Yeah, for sure. He's just kind of like you said, he's just going to be able to shoot the ball well, and it's gonna, because you have Oscar Clough, Omer Meyer. Like if they start Meyer at the 3, now you have 3 guys who are lights out shooters, but also can dribble off the bounce and run pick and roll. Like Fletcher Loyer can do that. He can take ball screens from around the top and drive inside. And then of course with TKR and Clough in the middle, it just creates so many options, and that's the difference between this year and last year. Last year, pretty much the only consistent option was Braden Smith, top of the key, high ball screen with TKR, and Fletcher was running around kind of picking up passes and trying to make the most of late rotations. This year, it's a completely different story, and I think that helps Fletcher in a lot of ways. And I think totally he's going to get plenty of opportunities to get that 3-point total higher. I think it's going to be a lot more like 2 years ago with Zach Edey, where he just benefited from defenses having to focus on other players, primarily Zach Edey that time. But now, like, there's just going to be people running all over the court, not knowing really who to guard, because you got to throw some help on Braden Smith because he's going to torch you, or TKR in the post, and eventually someone is going to be left with the softer guard. And I think Fletcher Loyer will benefit from that a lot if he can take advantage of it and still be that aggressive player that we like to see, and what is the best version of Fletcher Loyer. But I think it's going to be a really good season for him.
Well, I think he and the other 2 of the big 2, plus the rest of the cast, are going to be a defensive nightmare for a lot of teams, because you can't really double consistently one piece, because there are enough pieces around that are going to make you pay for that. You've got to have an elite defense full of athletic dudes that can do all sorts of different things that will quiet down the offense. And this may be a season where we see a Purdue team, and I'm not saying that I expect it, but it could be a season where we see Purdue averaging almost 90 points a game, but they're giving up 80, or 75, to where they're just going to outscore you. Now, could they play a lot better defense and maybe, the offense isn't as high? Sure. But the way I'm seeing things right now, personally, I think it's going to be a lot of offense, and it might be a defensive struggle for the Boilermakers at points, because they're going to play some teams that are really, really good.
Yeah, I don't know what their pace will look like next year. Part of me feels like it's probably, if anything, going to slow down, because you're going to play more minutes of Oscar Clough and Jacobson, who probably can't run the court as well as the guys they had last year. And when you're playing with guys like Omer Meyer, Braden Smith, Fletcher Loyer, I feel like they would benefit more from a half-court offense where they can get open, stand still threes and whatnot. So that could affect like their average point total. But I do think that they will be more of an offensive heavy team.
Yeah.
Defensively, they're not going to be bad. I don't think either of us are saying
I don't
that.
either. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just they're going to win games because of their offense, is I think where most likely what's going to happen.
There's not going to be many 58-56 games.
Yeah. Not unless they play like a team like Houston. And that's where it becomes really interesting because Houston has the defense potentially to handle a team like Purdue offensively, just because they're always one of the best defenses in the country. And obviously, they're
Right.
looking to be one of the best teams in the country this coming year. I think if Purdue got matched up with Houston at any point in the NCAA tournament, that would be a really, really well, a really interesting matchup because it's obviously they played last year in the tournament, but because Houston's defense kind of counters Purdue's offense, and they both have really talented players, a team like Houston would be an interesting matchup for Purdue. But overall, I think their offense is going to cause a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Their defense will be good enough to still be able to supplement against good offenses from other teams. It's going to make them really tough to stop.
Yeah. Well, let's move on from Fletch and go to TKR, Trey Kaufman-Renn. Honorable mention, All-American last season. And what a season, Grant. I mean, he's averaged over 20 points a game, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, became the third player in Big Ten history to average those and shoot at least 59% from the field. Zach Edey and Evan Eschmeyer from Northwestern a few years back are the only other two to have done that in Big Ten history. This is a really, really big time season performance. He scored 723 points last year, which is 10th most in school history. He quietly, Grant, and I think you will agree after I say this. He had quietly probably one of the most dominant seasons I've ever seen from a player because he wasn't the focal point, but he became it really quick during the season.
Yeah, I think we all expected him to take a step forward this season with Zach Edey departing because he was going to get a lot more touches and a lot more minutes, but I didn't quite expect it to go like this. I mean, not only did he average 20 points a game and the rebounds and whatnot, but he was extremely consistent. Like, he rarely had bad games. It was a lot like Zach Edey in the fact that you could count on 20 a game from him pretty much every night. And for a guy that was 6'9" or whatever he is, and plays at the 4 primarily, but had to play at the 5 at different points because of the lineup and the rotation, that was really, really impressive. Says a lot about where he's at as a player, and now playing alongside Oscar Clough, Daniel Jacobson more consistently, like, that's really scary because he's going to play against a lot of 4s instead of 5s, and it's just going to be, again, like you said with Fletcher Loyer, Purdue or teams guarding Purdue can't double as easily or quickly, and it's just going to make life really difficult. And I think TKR also is one. His averages might not go up, or they might even come down because of the other options and because of the fact that Purdue's offense will probably change a little bit because of their players. But I think his efficiency and his production in that sense could actually go up because he's just not going to be as focused on as much by other teams because you can't throw all your pieces at him. So I think he's another one that can come out and have a good season.
There are a couple of things, and I think he scored 35 out of 36 games. He had at least double figures in scoring. I know the one game that he didn't, and that was at IU when he had 9 points total, which was just that second half was probably the worst half of basketball I saw Purdue play all of last year. But the other thing that he had issue with was foul trouble. Now, I think with the additions, bringing back Jacobson healthy and Oscar Clough, that's going to allow him not to play against bigger dudes to where he's going to probably get into some foul trouble. Now, he does have an issue with moving screens. There were multiple games that we saw at least one, if not 2 moving screens that he got whistled for. I'm sure that's a focal point on his work, is being able to stay still through the pit or through the screen and then move, not try to get it, just work on that. But his foul trouble, I think, is going to go down simply because he's not having to guard guys out of position. He's not a 5, but he had to play a 5. And I'll tell you what, the fact that he Led the country in field goals with 292 baskets last year. He was the second straight Boilermaker to lead the country. We all know who that the previous year was because Zach Edey scored 336. That's how dominant of a season he had his last year at Purdue. But that also tells you what TKR is capable of doing when he's a big piece of the offense, and he's going to remain a big piece of this offense.
Yeah, I do think I do think there are some areas that he can improve, like foul trouble, like you said. I think a lot of that will be helped by the lineup and the fact that he's playing
Right.
the four. But I also think that's also a skill and like learning how to play and defend without fouling. I think rebounding is a really big area for him. I think again, playing the four and playing alongside Oscar Clough and Daniel Jacobson makes a huge difference in his ability to rebound. Like he played the four on that Final Four team, and they were one of the best rebounding teams in the country. But like last year, they
didn't
were
hurt
not
to
the
have
rebounding
Zach
team.
Edey either, though.
Right. And TKR kind of just did his job. He didn't have to pull down a lot of rebounds himself. Right. But like last year, even though he was undersized for the five and whatnot, he also played a lot of minutes. And he played at the five, which meant he was one of their primary rebounders, if not their primary rebounder, when he was on the floor. And he still averaged, what'd you say, 6 rebounds a game? 7? I mean,
he averaged, let me get back up there, 6.5 rebounds per game.
Yeah. So he was
as
not
an undersized center.
Right. Like, so not bad, but still you would expect most centers to be getting up closer to 10. And he was 6.5. And you can't blame the guy. He's playing the five when he's 6'9". But given how many minutes he played, all those opportunities to only come up with 6.5 rebounds, I think that's an area he can improve is his rebounding. And if he becomes a better force on the glass, plus Clough, who averaged 12 last year, and the guards that Purdue has that are all good rebounders, Braden Smith, namely among them, now Purdue goes from being a weak rebounding team to, again, one of the best rebounding teams in the country, which is what we're used to seeing from them in their previous years. So I think rebounding and defense would really be defense/foul trouble are two of the areas that TKR can still improve that can take him even further into being a first team, fighting for maybe first team All-American next year in addition to Braden Smith.
I think you'll see his rebound numbers go up, and let me kind of explain why compared to this year. If you take them in zones, circle zones around the hoop, as you go progressively out further, the taller you are in those zones, the better. Now, you take him as an undersized five, he's not getting a lot of those inside the zone that a big man would be. Now, you go out further, that's where a good-sized four, which he is a good-sized four, would be kind of dominant because he's got the length that maybe he can out-rebound some of those longer rebounds that go out further. There were a lot sometimes that Braden Smith was getting rebounds 8 or 9 feet away from the hoop. Well, you put TKR out there, he's getting those, and probably over some, because he's got the length and he doesn't have to be underneath guarding a big guy trying to prevent him from rebounding it. And he falls short because he's just not big enough to go against those bigger dudes. He's going to be the bigger dude on the outside portion of that close to the hoop. If that makes sense, I kind of was cobbling that answer together a little bit all at once, but he's gonna be a bigger guy in his rebounding zone, I guess, is my thing. Once he gets to his position of a four.
Yeah, ultimately, like whether or not his rebounding numbers go up, like physical, like averages, whether or not he averages more rebounds this season than last season, I think you're right in the sense that the rebounds he can get, he's going to get a lot more of those than he did last year that are in his zone or in his ability to get. And a lot of the ones he doesn't get are going to fall to Purdue's centers typically, or Braden Smith. Like, it's tough to say whether his physical rebounding numbers will increase. Maybe they will, like you said. Either way, I think his efficiency as a rebounder goes up. I think Purdue's overall team rebounding goes up. And that's really all that matters is he benefiting Purdue more this year than what he was able to do last year, and I think he can.
I really, honestly, I've said this, and I don't discount it or take it lightly, or wasn't joking when I said it. First off, the Karl Malone Power Forward of the Year award, whatever it's called exactly, those people need to be on check, because Trey Kaufman-Renn now has a position. Last year he didn't fit into either one, the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar Award or the Karl Malone Award, and he was left off of both of those lists. And I think that's a travesty, because he was one of the best 10 of either one of those places, positions. But this year he's going to be a 4, so he best be on that list, be it the semifinalist, finalist, whatever. But he is going to be a power forward this year. Secondly, if he progresses even half as much as he did from his junior or his sophomore year to last year, if he progresses half of that, you're looking at, I truly do believe this, he's going to be on the Wooden Award list, whether it be a finalist, maybe not, just depending on, like you said, some of those stats may come down from what he did this last season, just because of all the great additions they made. That's not going to make him less valuable. It's just going to look like he had a more of a down year for people that aren't watching, and paying attention. Now, should he be a finalist? Maybe. I don't know. We don't know what he's going to perform, or how the actual performance is going to come. But he should be at least on that Wooden list, at least as a semifinalist, if he progresses half as much as he did from the year previous to this year,
Yeah, I mean, any way you cut it, between TKR in the front court, Braden Smith in the back court, you're looking at probably the 2 of the best players in the country.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would argue 2 of the top 5, if not top 10 in the country coming back, regardless of stats. I mean, Braden Smith didn't average an insane amount of points. Like, yeah, it was a good amount, but not the type of scoring you would expect a first-team All-American guy to have. But his assist game and everything else put him up there. Plus, just the way these guys affect winning. I mean, everybody knows their names now. Everybody knows if Purdue ends up being a 1 seed in the tournament, being one of the best teams in the country, like, that matters in some of these awards, I think, and committees will see that. So I do think TKR has a chance to be in that position, even if his numbers come down. But regardless of that, we know these are 2 of the best players in the country, and they're going to be critical to what Purdue does, no matter what stat lines say or any of those types of numbers.
Yeah, I agree, and I think TKR could be. I don't know that we're gonna get. We're not going to accomplish anything without the input of all of these players. But I think TKR and who we're getting ready to talk about next, Mr. Braden Smith, I think are as they go, we go as a team. And the others are going to be adding in and just making Purdue that much better. But I honestly, you have a good start when you have 2 All-Americans coming back from your previous year, from a season that, in a lot of people's eyes, Purdue could have done more. I think it kind of surprised people of how good they were with what they had lost previously. So I think to have 2 All-Americans coming back, people are scratching their head going, what in the world are we looking at? Because, honestly, it's going to be a tough going. Like you said, they should be a top team in the country going forward. We talked about it last week sometime, about whether or not a national championship or bust type season. Is it a disappointment? There could be some disappointment in this season if they don't at least contend for what the expectations are, and if they flounder in the Big Ten season and finish 4th and end up with a 3 seed and bow out in the second round, that could be a disappointing season, grant taking everything, the picture as a whole. But to have those 2 coming in, they rightfully so, these expectations should be there.
Right. They are the kind of the foundation that Painter has built around for this season. And they're just they have the most experience. I think last year, even though they didn't have as successful of a year as a team, I think it's going to really, really help those guys that played through it, like the big
Agreed.
three, namely having to take on larger roles than what maybe they should have had to. All those things are going to help this year because they might be able to take some lesser roles even than what we expected. Simply in the fact that, like, TKR doesn't have to play the 5 all the time, and Braden Smith might not have to play as many minutes, and Fletcher Loyer isn't going to be as relied upon to do all the things that Purdue needed him to do last year. All of those things, I think, are going to make last year a really big help to those players. Even though ultimately we didn't want them in those positions, we wanted them to maybe be able to go a little further and maybe have 1 or 2 more pieces like Jacobson, a healthy Jacobson, to help relieve some of that pressure. But it's going to really help them for this season. And
Oh, for
if
sure.
they can fight for a championship, I think a lot of Purdue fans might say it was worth it.
Well, and think about what the big three's been through. We brushed upon it as freshmen, and yeah, TKR was a redshirt freshman, but still a freshman nonetheless. They were a number 1 seed, only the second number 1 seed ever to lose to a 16 seed. Then the next year, they move into year 2 of Zach Edey as the best player in the country, and they go to the national championship game, and they play a team that the only team that could have beaten Purdue in that tournament was UConn, and UConn did that. They had the athletes and they had the ability to go one-on-one with Zach Edey, even though Zach Edey scored 37 points, I think, in the national championship game. They shut down everything else. Braden Smith was the closest one after that with, I think, 9 or 12, one of the two. But and then last year, after Zach Edey's gone, they're going to step back. And they did a little, but they still were really, really good. They showed what they could do without the big man. Now this year, they are the big men, and they've got a supporting cast that should be to the point where most people, depending, if it goes like it should or like we expect it to, they'll be the overwhelming favorite, I think, to win the national championship. I honestly do. But let's move on to the last of the big three. That is the All-American, the Bob Cousy Award winner for 2024-25. That's Braden Smith. And Grant, watching this guy progress as he has from his freshman year to now, is he, in your mind? I think he's the preseason Big Ten Player of the Year, like he was last year. But do you think he's one of the front runners for the Naismith?
I think preseason for sure, because I feel like he was. If you were to put these guys in standings from last year, I think Cooper Flagg 1, Janai Broome 2, and then I think Braden Smith would have been 3. And so naturally, with Broome and Flagg moving on, Smith would slide into that preseason favorite position.
Yeah.
Whether or not he wins it, I think there are a lot of factors in that throughout the season. Obviously, he's got to play well. His stats will be interesting. It's possible that his stats come down a little bit for the same reason as Fletch and TKR, where they just have more options, and so he's not relied upon to do everything like he was last season. I don't think it's going to come down that much, though. I think he's still going to do most of it, and he's going to look like just as good, if not better, as he was last year. So I definitely think he has a good chance to win it. Who knows whether or not somebody else will come up and challenge him for that and potentially be in a role where he can get more stats and maybe put together a better resume than Braden. But at the same time, Braden's going to be on a great team. And if Purdue's winning and is a national championship contender or favorite as the season progresses, that will be taken into account. Yeah. I totally think Braden Smith at this point will be considered the favorite to win it.
I agree. And you look at last year's just stats. He averaged 15.8 points a game, 8.7 assists per game, 4.5 rebounds as a point guard, and then add in 2.2 steals per game. And I think he averaged about 75 sales of popcorn every game as well. He just, and we talked about Fletch being such a sharpshooter from threes. Braden Smith also led the team in minutes played with 1,333 minutes played, but he also led the team with 83 three-pointers. Now, that might not have been something that people realize, that while Fletch was the sharpshooter in the facet of percentage, Braden was scored more threes.
Yeah, and he made tougher threes. Like Fletcher is basically coming spot up or off screens. Braden's coming off the bounce. He's shaking defenders free.
Stepping back.
He's doing right. Like he is taking a lot of tough shots and he's making a lot of them. So I think you can argue Braden probably is the best shooter on this team, even though Fletcher is so known for it. His percentages are so great. Braden, in the sense that he can create it and score out of high clips still, I think you could totally make that argument. But yeah, the more I think about it, the more Braden and Fletcher are like the Steph Curry and Klay Thompson of college basketball. Just you think back to that Rutgers game at Mackey Arena last year. I mean, they both made 6 threes or something like that. I mean,
I believe so. Yes.
Every other possession they were like going back and forth. Like Braden would hit one, and then the next possession Fletcher would hit one. It was insane. But yeah, he is a great shooter. Obviously, his passing is just unrivaled. I mean, I love watching this guy play. Everybody loves watching him play because of how he manipulates the game. It's crazy that these guys are all going to be seniors since their last year, but yeah, he has just done a really good job throughout his career, and his offensive game, I think, is what has developed even potentially the most. His offensive game and his ability to make less mistakes and keep from turning the ball over are the two things I've noticed throughout his 3 years, going up on his fourth, that have just developed so much and turned him into a solid point guard that has talent to the greatest point guard in the country.
Well, let's talk about a little bit that we haven't even kind of mentioned. We've talked about his scoring, his shooting, and things like that. There are some things here that I wanted to look at before we kind of wrap things up. He set the Big Ten record for assists in conference play only. 175 assists during the conference season. The previous record was 157 by Cassius Winston from Michigan State. So that's almost a full assist per game that he averaged more than Cassius Winston. And at the point, Cassius Winston's still the top assist guy in the Big Ten. Braden's trucking that down, but he's only the second player in NCAA history to have at least 550 points, 300 assists, and 150 rebounds in a season. Ja Morant is the only other person. And he is the only player to add at least 75 steals. So the 550 points, the assists, and the rebounds, he and Ja Morant. But then you throw steals into there, Braden Smith makes the list as the only person. With his 15 assists against Houston, and I think it was 12 of 15 made baskets in the second half he assisted on. But with 15 assists in the Sweet 16 against Houston, he's the only NCAA player in NCAA history, tournament history, to have 2 games of at least 15 assists. One being the 2024 game against Gonzaga, and I was at that game, and it was apparent, even with Zach Edey on the floor, Braden Smith was the best player on that floor at that time, and then against Houston as well last year. He is also the second player in Big Ten history to register 450 points, 250 assists, 125 rebounds, 60 steals in assists, or in a season. He's done that twice. The only other player, Grant, you have any idea who it is?
Tell me.
Magic Johnson.
Right.
So
sounds right.
What he's doing is, yes, he benefited from Zach Edey, absolutely. But I think Zach Edey benefited greatly having Braden Smith as his point guard. They both were mutually benefited by one another. And I think Braden Smith showing that it wasn't just Zach Edey being the dominant guy that got him his stats, that got Braden his stats. It was, I'm that good too. And I think he carries that with him enough, and that's what makes me even more excited. Barring an injury, I really think he's going to blow up this year. He might not show it statistically. Honestly, he may average 15 points a game. Roughly the same stats, but he carries the chip on his shoulder that everybody has discounted him every single year that he's had. That it's not him, it's somebody else that he's benefiting from. And I think he wants to make a huge statement this year.
Yeah, and that potentially is his most valuable asset is not his skill as a basketball player, but his mental drive and
Yeah,
competitive attitude that allows him to be clutch in games, that allows him to prove doubters wrong, all of those things. Uh, that's, I think, the driving force behind what his college career has turned into is proving people wrong and fighting
for
for
sure.
the people that gave him a chance, and to have that kind of mentality combined with a skill set and the determination to just work hard and get better with the program that Matt Painter has, it's just such a deadly combination that has turned a player like Braden Smith, who had one high major offer, to a National Player of the Year candidate. And huge credit has to go to the coaching staff, and obviously, but Braden Smith is a special player, a special kid. I'm obviously, I think we're all looking forward to one more season with him, but also post collegiately, he's going to be fun to keep track of, especially because he's a little bit of a unique player. Like at the pro level, you don't see players like him as much. You see guys that are athletic and bigger and whatnot, but I think he definitely has a pro outlook and could be kind of like Zach Edey, where people doubt him at the pro level, and he just continues to surprise and overachieve. And so he's going to have a nice career. Hopefully everything goes well for him and stays healthy, because that would be the one thing that would just be crushing, is to see him or one of his teammates go down with a tough injury, and
Mhm.
it affects their careers. It just kind of takes them away from everything they work towards.
Well, and the one thing that we've made the statement, we've talked about his loyalty. This is what makes me the most excited, is reading all those stats and things that he's accomplished to this point, and knowing that there were much higher NIL offers coming into him this last offseason, or this offseason, and he still said, nope, we're running it back. We're bringing it back one more time, as a finale to our careers. We're going to run it back one more time because we want to bring the national championship to West Lafayette. We want to do, and the fact that he forewent a lot of a big, huge payday grant. I mean, he's last I saw at Purdue, he's 1.9 million. It's a lot of money. Don't get me wrong, but it has been confirmed that there were much larger offers that came in for him, and it's not the money, it's the loyalty that he values more. He knows who stuck by him in the times where he, like you said, he only got one major offer to play basketball in college. And so he says, you took the chance on me, I'm going to remain loyal, and we're going to ride this out, and we're going to see what happens, because he's played enough, he's bet enough on himself in the past that this is not not a hard decision, I don't think, for him to say, we're just going to beat everybody, and we're going to show that we know, Matt Painter knows what he's doing. We know what we're doing. We know how to work hard. We know what we want, and we want to bring the great fans of Purdue University something that they have never enjoyed before.
He never even entertained the NBA draft. I mean, you kind
Right.
of thought that he would at least test the waters. I think a lot of people kind of expected that.
I thought it was a
Never even
foregone
declared.
conclusion he was gonna.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that just shows like he just wasn't messing around. Like he was coming back to Purdue. We're going to run it back. We're not going to flirt around with different options as far as transferring or going to the draft. Let's make this official and let's get to work so that we can
Right.
make the most of one more year. And I mean, I think we all appreciate that as Purdue fans,
For
obviously,
sure.
to have players that dedicated to the program. But
Yeah.
it's good to see for college basketball as a whole. I think to have players like that who care about winning and care about the programs they're a part of enough to do those types of things and make those decisions.
Absolutely. So it's makes me even more excited. The more I sit here and think about what the potential could be, I'm not saying undefeated, but it would be great, to see that. But my thing is honestly, you lose some games early, but you get that experience and make yourself more battle tested to where March comes and it's not as much of a battle. Nothing's going to come easy, and it's always like I've stated, matchups when it comes to the NCAA. But right now, I think, with the expectation of what we should have, Purdue's going to be a nightmare for everyone else. That's not to say that they won't have tough matchups against them, but I think they're going to be the nightmare matchup for everyone that is on their schedule. I really do.
Yeah, like you can't always control what matchups you get in the tournament, but you can control how many teams you match up well against. And Purdue is going to match up well against pretty much everybody in the country. And obviously, we don't know what teams are going to look like at that point in the season. Maybe there are a couple that could match up well with Purdue and cause problems. I'm sure there will be some that match up better than others, at least. We'll see what happens, obviously, when the time comes. But I think Purdue is going to be able to put themselves in a position to match up with most teams really, really well, and that's about all you can do as far as putting yourself in a good position to win a championship.
I agree. Well, Grant, that wraps up our roster evaluation, wrapping it up with the big three. That also brings us to the end of the Tuesday edition of Boilermaker Lounge. Such a great topic to talk about. I love talking Purdue basketball, and it makes me happy each time we sit down to do an episode, because that means each day that goes by, we're getting closer and closer. And you're going to be hearing this all summer long too. We're getting closer and closer. So that brings us to the end. Friday, we will have another episode of not really sure what we're going to talk about, but we'll have something to talk about. Then starting next week, we will start having we'll have a show on Tuesday. We will not have a show next Friday. So this Friday we will. Next Friday we will not. I will be traveling, and so I won't be able to get a show done. But then after that, we'll start our all Beyond the Rails segments with Walter Jordan, then Chris Kramer, 2 parts each for them, and then also we will start looking at seasons past Boilermaker teams that we think their seasons deserve a little bit more of a review, and talk about some of those things. Probably a lot of homework for you, Grant, because they're at least 10 years out. So, but we could definitely talk about that. We also have some more guys on Beyond the Rails scheduled that we will get those out during the summer as well. So thank you so much for joining us on this Tuesday edition of Boilermaker Lounge. For Grant Flora, I'm Sam Sprunger. We'll talk to you on Friday.